I use wristwatches, timepieces, to mark special moments in time or to commemorate special people in my life, which means each watch in my collection has a meaningful story to tell. In no particular order in mind, let's start with the Seiko SPB121J1. Colloquially referred to as the Alpinist, the moment in time this watch marks is the first time I closed a six-figure sale for my business. For years, I had been delivering projects valued between $3,000 and $20,000. But after developing and tweaking a new outbound sales strategy and process, closing that six-figure sale was a huge boost of confidence that transitioned me from years of grinding out projects that only kept the lights on to being able to be much more selective and effective in closing sales that were significantly more impactful. I chose this Alpinist for a few reasons. One, the client that was willing to bet their critical results on me. Their logo is primarily green. Second, the most unique element of this watch is the compass complication, marking the moment in time where I was able to leave the blind, aimless path of eking out low-value sale after sale after sale, to now always having the confidence in the direction to move when it comes to bringing money in. Next up, the Hamilton H3841-6711. This is what I chose to celebrate hitting 10,000 subscribers. Why would I commemorate something so seemingly insignificant? It's because of Casey Neistat. He said that
getting to 1 million was not as hard as getting to 100,000 subs. See, getting to 100,000 subs was still not as hard as getting to 10,000 subs. Getting to 10,000 is the hardest thing to do on YouTube.
I chose this watch because of what a chronograph complication represented. Watches measure the passing of time regardless of whether or not we're deliberate. But a chronograph, a fancy word for stopwatch, is our deliberate measure of time by pressing the pushers. And to me, these pushers represented so many deliberate button pushes. My own countless deliberate pushes of the record button, and of course the first 10,000 of you who deliberately pushed that red subscribe button. Why don't we stick with YouTube with my most recent addition, the silver play button watch. And for this milestone, I chose the Grand Seiko SPGA211G, colloquially known as the Grand Seiko Snowflake because of the immaculate textured dial emulating the look of freshly fallen snow. The choice to use this timepiece to mark 100,000 subscribers was an obvious one to me. I typically don't like wearing bracelets because I like a lighter weight on wrist. But with this piece needing to stay silver throughout to match the 100,000 subscriber plaque, this Grand Seiko's case and bracelet are made of titanium, a material that's as strong as steel while being 45% lighter. Grand Seiko's craftsmanship is second to none, and the Zaratsu polishing done meticulously by hand is incomparable. The first 100,000 of you who have chosen to kick it with me right here on YouTube every now and then, I'm reminded of you every time this watch gets worn. With these two very special watches, I wanted to store them in a special way. And what perfect timing, since this combo deck just shipped to all Kickstarter backers. In a world where watch storage and display options are generally relegated to somewhat boring roles and cases, Holme and Hadfield have really made such an elegant and badass solution for us everyday carry nerds and watch lovers. With the ability to choose which type of post we want, this clear acrylic hinged cover to keep them displayed yet dust-free, and this organization drawer for accessories, I absolutely love this thing. And although Holme and Hadfield are not sponsoring this video, they have been kind enough to let me share a whopping 20% discount for a limited time on this combo deck. And you can find the secret discount code down in the description below. But next up is the watch that took me the absolute longest to discover and decide to buy. This is the Seiko SSA405J1, known as the Open Heart Blue Moon. Commemorating my father's life after he was murdered was no easy decision, but I'm so glad I waited. And it is a perfect representation of Pops in every single way. Check it out. He worked 7 days a week. And because he didn't really have any weekends, would always ask me what day of the week it was. And the fact that this watch doesn't have a day or date complication is just so him. In fact, this watch has 0 complications, and he himself was truly an uncomplicated guy. So much so that the open heart is so representative of how transparent he was with everyone. No tricks, no ulterior motives, and yet, like many dads who don't share much in the way of personal thoughts and feelings, that open heart resting on that gorgeous deep blue dial, adorned with the barely visible pattern of concentric circles, feels so fitting in representing the lasting mystery to the man I never truly got to know. I mean, he's my dad, so I know him, but I didn't really know him. You know what I mean? Not his deepest dreams, aspirations, fears, or stories. And so this watch is perfect in every way. But next, let's go with my very first mechanical watch, the Seiko SKX007. 8 years ago, I found myself as an inexperienced entrepreneur in Japan trying to land my first international client, and that wide-eyed naive ignorance actually worked out as I closed that first overseas deal. I suppose sometimes when you're blindly unaware of the barriers, you can end up accidentally circumnavigating them. Embarrassingly, I chose the SKX mainly because it had a giant red on sale sign next to it. I paid just over 12,000 yen for this sidekick, about $120. It's even more strange because now, having been into watches for a while, I actually do not have any interest in dive watches, and it's reflected in the only modification I made to this SKX, swapping out the original 60-minute dive bezel insert for this dual time one. Now, if I were to say to travel to the West Coast, once I set the time when I land, I can spin the bezel 3 hours over and keep track of Toronto time in case I have a cross time zone call scheduled. Commemorating that first experience of pursuing business abroad, every time I wear it, I can look back on embracing being naive and foolish when trying to accomplish something new. Moving on to the funnest piece I own, the next watch is my sibling watch, the Casio GMW B5000. My sister bought this watch for me and it's so befitting of her. I remember seeing a video Hodinkee made where they featured this watch in their Week on the Wrist series, when they said that it's a watch that really doesn't take itself too seriously. I can say the same for my sister, as a person who doesn't take themselves too seriously. She constantly asks me to do weird shit like this. As weird as she is, she's always and continues to have a heart of gold, and I often choose to wear this as a reminder to be more like her, to not take myself too seriously when I'm trying to make that first impression with someone new. And speaking of the G-Shock, to round out the state of my collection are other watches that I have received as gifts. This silver all-metal Casio is sort of a companion piece to the Grand Seiko in that it was a gift given to me for hitting 100,000 subscribers. This Seiko 5 Sports GMT was a really surprising gift that came out of the blue from several people who pulled up after I helped them with some business planning and strategy for their startup. And it also came at such a perfect time, just 2 weeks before I went on that 6-month business trip from January to July. And it was my true daily watch during that entire trip, with the GMT complication allowing me to constantly keep track of up to 3 different time zones. Watches, especially mechanical watches, are very expensive. And when it comes to money, how we choose to use it and how we learn to amplify it are constant pursuits. A foolproof system on how to spend money wisely is invaluable. And if you don't have an effective system that works for you, you will definitely want to watch this video right up here. And if earning more money is where you are focused, this video down here is for you. I'll leave them both on screen so you can choose which one to watch. But while you're deciding, if you got value from this video, consider liking, subscribing, and hitting that bell so you'll be notified the moment new videos just like this one drop.